Welcome into Outkick the Show, boys and girls. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Thursdays wherever you may find yourself across the entirety of the width, the breadth of the country and beyond. Want to tell you right now, let's get rolling. 3 games Thursday night, NFL preseason action. You want to gamble on them, make sure you get the best number at sportsbookreview.com. A lot to get to today, but I want to make sure that you know the best place you can go is sportsbookreview.com. And if you want to go to sportsbookreview.com/outkick, you can see all of the premium offerings out there in general that I hope that you will be able to be entertained by. All right, we got a lot to get to. I appreciate all of you coming and hanging out with us on this Thursday edition. Bunch of stuff breaking as we're going to as we're starting the show. Baseball beanings. Last night, the big beaning between the Atlanta Braves and the Miami Marlins. We also had issues continuing in the Dodgers and Giants series. I got some opinions on it. Sam Darnold is playing Game 2 tonight, why I think he's going to be starting Week 1 for the New York Jets. The New York Times has got an unbelievable article on white privilege, which is going to blow your minds that I'm going to enjoy reading for you. Chris Berman potentially coming back at ESPN. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar weighs in on the national anthem, compares it to the songs that slaves were forced to sing. I swear to God, this is real. The songs that slaves were forced to sing when they worked in the fields. And John Elway has weighed in on Colin Kaepernick and what he said in the deposition. So much to get to right here. But let's begin with baseball beanings. And I think a lot of you out there right now are thinking to yourself, why in the world does baseball allow high-priced, big-time stars to get hit intentionally by pitchers? And I'm with you. I think this is a stupid part of baseball. I think if baseball right now was making an intelligent decision, they would make a huge penalty for Urena, the pitcher who threw and hit Acuna on the first pitch of the game. This is only the 4th time it's happened in baseball history where the first pitch has pegged somebody, hit him right near the elbow. He could have been seriously injured. He'd hit 3 straight home runs to begin the game. All right? I got to tell you this right now. I don't understand why baseball doesn't put an end to this. Let me give you an example. In the NBA, when the Malice at the Palace happened, and Ron Artest and Ben Wallace and everybody else back in the day, what was that, like 2005-ish? When the Malice at the Palace happened and the fight spiraled into Detroit between the Pacers and the Pistons, everybody out there who was around the NBA basically said, we got to cure this issue. We have too many fans near the court. They pay high-priced dollars. That was something that the NBA decided can never happen again. And my argument here is baseball can't just throw up their hands and say, what do you expect us to do? There's unwritten rules. It's difficult to stop. If baseball wanted to stop this from happening, all they would have to do is implement significant penalties for pitchers who intentionally hit batters. That's all that would have to happen. If they came out and they gave this Marlins pitcher a 40-game suspension, that means he misses 8 starts. He misses a quarter of the season. I don't think anybody would throw and hit batsmen hardly ever again. The fact that baseball doesn't give substantial penalties in cases like these is a sign to me that baseball wants it to happen. And I'm here telling you right now that sooner or later, somebody's going to get hit in the head, there's going to be a serious injury, and baseball is going to say, why in the world did we ever allow this? I disagree. I don't think it's that hard to assume intent. When you throw the hardest pitch that you've thrown all year, and it's your opening pitch of the game, and the guy has hit 3 straight home runs, and you peg him right in the elbow wrist area, right in this area, to me there's no doubt that you're doing it intentionally. If you don't know if somebody's doing it intentionally, then you don't have to kick them out. But if somebody has a pattern of consistently hitting people, then I'm willing to put all that evidence together. I think if baseball wanted to, they could wipe this out of the sport immediately. They could do it. All they would have to do is institute significant penalties. And the fact that they don't do it is a sign that I think baseball doesn't want it out of the game. Just like, honestly, If the NHL wanted to end fighting in NHL games, they could. In the NBA, and the NBA is a perfect example. Guys used to fight all the time. Now it never happens because the penalty for fighting has become so significant. College basketball is a great example too. College basketball players used to fight all the time. Then they said, hey, if you punch a guy once, I think it's you miss like half the season. If you get caught punching again, you're out for the entire year. And guys don't do it. Guys don't do it at all. I just think it's bad for baseball. I think eventually we're going to get an injury, and I think it's going to be a significant aspect of the game itself. I really do. And I say that, look, you can say, hey, Clay, you never hardly talk about baseball. You talked about it on your radio show. You're talking about it right now on Outkick. This is good for baseball. You could be right. You could be right. But I think in general, when you have a situation where a guy is intentionally hit by nearly 100-mile-an-hour baseball, you can't allow it to continue to happen. You can't allow a pitcher to intentionally bean somebody else. There's a good chance that it's going to happen again and that it's going to continue to happen in the years ahead. In that Miami Marlins versus Atlanta Braves series, somebody else is going to get hit. And I just think it's dumb. I think if you have to resort to, during the game, things that are not a part of the game in order to entertain your fans, it's a sign that there's too many games going on. There's no fighting in football, hardly ever. If they do fight, guys get suspended. The reason why it almost never happens. So I think it's dumb. I think if baseball were smart, they would do away with it. You can say this is a DBAP strategy. My strategy is just apply the game. Play the game as best you can. And I think it will make a lot of sense. All right, there's a couple of things I want to hit right off the top here. This is a real story. You guys know that I subscribe to two newspapers, okay? I subscribe to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. I'm an old man, and that means I still get newspapers. So I have an actual newspaper here. I was reading the New York Times this morning. I read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times because I feel like I get two different sides of the political equation. I get the liberal side from the New York Times. I get the conservative business side from the Wall Street Journal. I can compare the way they both cover each story, and I can help to get a better sense of how to talk and consider and analyze stories aggressively in my own life. This is from the New York Times today. It is a advice column. This is a real thing that existed. I want to show it to you. Shedding the cloak of white guilt. Can you guys see this on Facebook, and can you see it on Twitter? This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is a real question. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. This is the New York Times. My position on this is straightforward. I think white, left-wing, far left-wing liberals are the worst people on the planet. Because I think what they believe is they believe that minorities are so ill-equipped to succeed in the world and in the country that they have to try to protect them. And I think that white liberalism is a disease, and that people who ask questions like this are diseased in the mind. I think they have lost their mind. One thing that I'm doing every night before I go to bed for the last month or two, and I'm going to do it all through football season, I am reading books about World War II. I was always a Civil War history buff. I've read like every major Civil War history buff. I'm a big fan now of World War II. And I'm reading the book, Band of Brothers, I think it's called. They made an HBO series about it. I haven't watched it. But it's about the guys who were in the paratroopers in World War II. And I read it before I go to bed because it brings home to me how much of pussies everybody in America today is. And last night I was reading a chapter about these guys in Band of Brothers, I think Stephen Ambrose's book. And they said that these guys who decided to become paratroopers, the first time many of them had ever gotten into an airplane, they jumped out. Now, I just want you to think about that for a minute. These guys were from farms, towns, all over the place in America. And the first time they ever got in an airplane, they jumped out with parachutes that they had folded themselves. It's one of the most unbelievable things. Like, that detail just hit me. And I was like, these guys who fought in World War II personified the DBAP lifestyle so much. 18, 19-year-old guys who got in an airplane, who had never been in an airplane before, and jumped out with parachutes they had folded themselves. That is unbelievable. It is phenomenal to think about. These guys had never even been in an airplane. They go up in the sky. They've never even been that high before. And they jump out with parachutes that they have folded themselves. It's amazing. And I was thinking about that last night. I'm reading every night before I go to bed about World War II because I'd rather read about people with big brass balls than read about the pussies that make the news today. And then this morning, I'm sitting down and I read this story and I think to myself, can you imagine that this guy who wrote this is the grandson or great-grandson of World War II veterans who stormed the beaches at Normandy? And this is the shit that he's worried about now. This is an actual letter written to the New York Times. The headline, Shedding the Cloak of White Guilt. Shedding the Cloak of White Guilt. All right, this is what they say. I'm riddled with shame. White shame. This isn't helpful to me or to anyone, especially people of color. I feel like there is no me outside of my white, upper middle class, cisgender. By the way, the fact that the word cisgender exists, I don't even know what country I'm living in. Identity. I feel like my literal existence hurts people. Like I'm always taking up space that should belong to someone else. I consider myself an ally. I research proper etiquette, read writers of color, vote in a way that will not harm people of color and other vulnerable people. I talk about privilege with other white people, yet I fear that nothing is enough. Part of my fear comes from the fact that privilege is invisible to itself. What if I'm doing or saying insensitive things without realizing it? Another part of it is that I'm currently immersed in the whitest environment I've ever been in. My family has lived in the same apartment in East Harlem for 4 generations. Every school I attended, elementary through high school, was minority white, but I'm now attending an elite private college that is 75% white. I know who I am, but I realize how people perceive me, and this perception feels unfair. I don't talk about my feelings because it's hard to justify doing so while people of color are dying due to systemic racism, and making this conversation about me would be, again, centering whiteness. Yet bottling it up makes me feel an existential anger that I have a hard time channeling since I don't know my place. Instead of harnessing my privilege for greater good, I'm curled up in a ball of shame. How can I be more than my heritage? My fucking God. Whatever this person votes for, I'm going to be on the opposite side of the way this motherfucker votes for the rest of my life. I might have 40 years of life left, but I am going to try to track down whoever this motherfucker is, and whatever he decides to be for the rest of his life, I'm going to be against it. Sometimes it's important to know what stand you're taking. This stand represents everything that I hate in America today. Whatever this motherfucker side is on, I am going to be on the opposite side of him for the rest of my life. This is how crazy the world is going. This motherfucker's great-grandfather might well have gone up in a plane without ever having been in a plane before to jump out so he could go overseas, a place that he had never been before. Most of these guys hadn't even been outside of their state, so that he could storm the beaches of Normandy to fight Nazis. This motherfucker here is writing into the New York Times because he's upset about being born white. This is one of the most unbelievable things I have ever heard of in my life. The fact that people think like this makes me want to throw up. All right? Here is the truth of the matter. No matter what race, gender, ethnicity, religion, no matter who you sleep with, you can rely on one thing: the hand at the end of your sleeve. Okay? You are responsible for you. You are not responsible for what anyone did before you. You are not going to be responsible for what anyone did after you die. You get to make choices in your own life for the next 80 years or 100 years or 40 years or 50 years or however many lives of how many years you have of life on this planet. This strange universe that we now dwell in, where everyone is supposed to be hyper aware and hypersensitive of everybody else, is bullshit. Here's what needs to happen. You need to worry about yourself. Every day you need to get out of bed and you need to work harder than the day you did before. Every day you need to get a little bit better than you did the day before. That is how you make the world a better place. You don't make the world a better place by sitting around and writing into the New York Times because you're sensitive about your white privilege and the systemic racism which doesn't exist. I say this all the time because I think it's a fact that needs to pierce through the veil of American stupidity. Do you know who makes more money in America today than anybody else? Asian men. Is the world currently biased in America in favor of Asian men? Asian men make substantially more than white men. Is the world, do we have yellow privilege in this country? Have Asian men rigged the entire country to benefit them to the exclusion of other people? Or do they show up every day, work their asses off, study, and succeed in America without sitting around bitching and whining about every little thing that's going on elsewhere? Ultimately, you can't control anyone else. You can't make decisions for anyone else. The only person you are responsible for is the one inside of your body. And there is so much that can be done if you take individual responsibility and individual ownership of your life. But if you sit around writing in articles about shedding the cloak of white guilt, you, my friend, are the problem. You are an insult to everyone who has lived in America before you. DBAP, you pathetic little motherfucker. And by the way, the New York Times thinks they are making the world a better place. What they are actually doing is convincing minorities that they can't succeed because of this all-encompassing white power. It doesn't exist. If it did, then Asians would not have managed to become the most dominant ethnicity in this country today. Asian people every day are rising up and dunking on every other ethnic group in this country. Do you know why they're doing it? Because they put pressure on themselves and the culture demands that every day they be better than they were the day before. Ultimately, they are two words that define American life: be and better. Everything about American success is about being better, all right? When you sit around and you whine about what other people are doing, you are not focused on the two most important words in the American language: be better. That's the foundation of a democratic capitalistic system, a demand to be better. And you don't demand that other people be better. You demand first that you be better, and you don't write pussy editorials like this. It's ridiculous. Drives me insane. All right, that happened. Here's something else that happened. People who used to be intelligent are losing their minds and saying stupid things. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, great basketball player. He compared the national anthem to slave minstrel songs. I swear to God, I don't know how you can compare an NFL player standing for the national anthem to slaves singing minstrel songs. And anybody who even has that thought should be slapped in the head for being so stupid. Slaves were generally expected to sing as well as to work. They had to sing the oppressors' feel-good songs. The national anthem, he says, is the equivalent of NFL players standing for the national anthem is the equivalent of slaves being forced to sing minstrel songs. I don't even understand how someone can say that and not be immediately told that they are an imbecile. Yet this is how far the left wing has gone, that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar shows up and says, you know what the national anthem in the NFL reminds me of? It reminds me of slaves being forced to sing while they pick cotton. And everybody's like, you know what? That sounds similar to me. I remember that part of slavery where the slaves were paid millions of dollars to play a sport, and as part of the obligations of their chosen employment, they were required to stand for 2 minutes before they got paid millions of dollars to play a game. You know what? Now that you mention it, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, slaves singing songs is very similar to players being asked to stand for the national anthem before the game begins. I don't even understand how someone who has a functional brain could make that analogy, and how other reasonable people could not immediately destroy them for the stupidity of that opinion. All right, a couple of other things that are going on. We've got Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is playing game 2 tonight. And I think it is going to be a great game. I'm excited to sit down and watch the Jets ridiculously because I'm a believer in Sam Darnold. I think Darnold is going to come out and play really well in game 2. All right? That's Sam Darnold. Positive news. I love Elon Musk. People say, Clay, talk more, every now and then people say, talk more about what you love and less about what you hate. All right? I hate shredding the cloak of white guilt in the New York Times and the fact that they publish bullshit like this. I love Elon Musk. And why do I love Elon Musk? Because he embodies everything I say about be better. SpaceX, be better. It's favored to put a man on Mars before NASA's going to do it. Tesla, be better. Everybody's chasing Tesla's technology right now. I love everything about what Tesla is trying to do. All right? And he just announced, as if he doesn't have enough on his plate already, he just announced that he's now planning to drill a hole between East Hollywood in LA and the Dodger Stadium in Chavez Ravine to allow people to cut what is a hour and a half long drive. It's 3.6 miles into a 4-minute commute. I love everything about this idea. He says he can do it in 14 months. I have no idea if it's remotely possible, but what I like in life is big helicopter dick swings. All right? I don't know why everybody out there is trying to get on base with a bunt. I want a motherfucker to go up to the plate, and I want him to put his bat on his shoulder, and I want him to call a shot, and I want him to swing absolutely out of his shoes and try to drill the ball to a place the ball has never been before. I want helicopter dick swings. And Elon Musk is a helicopter dick capitalist, the likes of which we may have never seen before. Now, I think sometimes he gets into trouble on Twitter because I think he wants to move so fast. And I sometimes think about this with my own self. Twitter moves rapidly, but my brain moves a lot faster than Twitter. Elon Musk's brain moves a lot faster than Twitter. And sometimes I have to restrain myself and I have to say, okay, let's think before we speak. Let's write. Let's break down everything. I, now that I'm 39 years old, will work through some of my decision making, right? People think, oh, Clay Travis, he's controversial. He says all sorts of crazy stuff. By the time I have an opinion, I have worked through the entire opinion. You may not agree with my opinion, but I can make the argument for your side of the argument better than you can because I have already worked through the totality of it. People say, well, why don't you let your callers talk longer? Because most callers are so much dumber than I am, they don't make me think or put an interesting spin on things. So if you call in, I'm well open to your idea, but when you make an argument, if I immediately know I can make the argument better than you and I already know it's a bad argument, I'm going to push you to the side, keep moving, right? Elon Musk, I think a lot of times does that on Twitter. He's always on to the next thing. And I think that can be a challenge when you're trying to do a lot. You don't focus on every little detail. But I love this concept of he's decided to drill a hole from East Hollywood to Dodger Stadium, and he thinks it can happen in 14 months. And it'll be 3.6 miles, and it's just basically to prove that you don't have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half. I went to the World Series between the Astros and the Dodgers, and that was miserable. Trying to sit in traffic. Doug Gottlieb picked me up. We were driving out there trying to get to a game. Took forever. But I think in general, Elon Musk represents everything that is great about America. It's a good example of why immigration is important. I want us to go grab all the intellectual first-round draft picks from other countries, bring them here, give them the opportunity to flourish. Do you guys see? There's a big story about Tencent. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the biggest company in China. They're big into mobile gaming and video gaming and everything else. This is wild, and I think it deserves more attention. China hasn't been allowing them to get licenses for their video games because they think they're taking up too much time and kids playing them, and they're too violent. And I was thinking to myself, why is this not a bigger story in America? Everybody in America is all upset because Donald Trump comes out and calls the media out for fake news. Yet China, who most people would say is our biggest geopolitical competitor for the future, this is amazing. China is restricting the kinds of video games that its biggest company can make, and as a result of it not meeting earnings, it lost $170 billion in market cap valuation. Can you imagine if in America we were telling a company what video games they could make and or what movies they could make or what books they could release? I think, and I've been on this for a long time, China's ultimate flaw compared to the United States is in order to truly flourish, you have to believe in a robust and vibrant First Amendment because creative classes require and need as much space to create as they possibly can. I would be losing my mind if I was running this company and I thought I had a great idea for a wildly successful video game and China wasn't allowing me, the government was not allowing me to produce it. So this to me is why China is never going to be superior to America, because ultimately you need a free market and capitalism to determine what makes the most sense. Capitalism is often brutal and destructive. It can lose jobs. You can have all sorts of everything happen in a negative way. But you have to unlock the power of your creators. You cannot restrict what they can do. And this is why I think the most important thing in America today is not circumscribing artificially our natural discourse because you decide, oh, that's sexist, or oh, that's racist, or oh, that makes somebody uncomfortable. No, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in words offending people. I think in order to flourish as a country, we need for debate to be robust and uninhibited, and we need to protect people from the idea that they are going to lose their jobs if they say something a little bit outside the bounds of what's considered acceptable discourse. I don't believe in the concept of acceptable and unacceptable opinions. I think there are good opinions and there are bad opinions, not acceptable opinions and unacceptable opinions. The way you convince somebody that their opinion is wrong is by making a better argument in favor of yours, not by trying to silence them by saying something about their race or their gender or the acceptability of their opinion. And again, I see this in China, and I think it's restrictive, but I see it in America in the way the left wing polices what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to say now, and it troubles me. It honestly does. I see it as the biggest issue that faces our country today because I think it leads to identity politics, which leads to tribalization, which leads to everybody, instead of trying to be better and being responsible for their own individual selves, I think it leads to everybody looking around and pointing fingers and saying, the reason why I didn't succeed is because of you. That white guy is the reason why I didn't succeed. No. Don't give people the opportunity to make excuses because if you do, they'll use them. All right, speaking of excuses, John Skipper to me personified everything that I hate about this shedding the cloak of white guilt article. I think John Skipper is the kind of guy who would have written in asking about what to do about the white guilt that he felt. And I think as a result, he destroyed a very powerful company in ESPN. Now, Jimmy Pitaro and the people in charge of ESPN now are starting to make substantially intelligent decisions. They're talking about bringing back Chris Berman. If you don't know who Chris Berman is, well, everybody knows who Chris Berman is. I think this is an important move because basically what it represents is a thorough repudiation of every decision that John Skipper made during his tenure at the helm of ESPN. I think John Skipper was racked by white guilt. I think he was horribly racked by cocaine, everything else. I think he was making really bad decisions. But I think ultimately, bottom line, he was a white guilt pioneer. And I think if you sit around thinking that you have white guilt all day, you're probably going to be a shitty capitalist, you're probably going to be a shitty manager, and you're going to make decisions based on what somebody looks like as opposed to trying to diagnose whether they have the talent to advance you forward. I think that's why ESPN became a political organization, because John Sniffer, a.k.a. John Skipper, a.k.a. give me some more cocaine so I can go hire some more unqualified people to put on television and have our ratings tank even worse than they already have. I think ESPN is acknowledging that they are a fundamentally political organization, that they have only made one side of the equation comfortable. And as a result, I think ESPN's brand has completely collapsed. All right, if you like me, if you like this show, share it with your friends. Hope you enjoy tonight. I can't wait to watch Sam Darnold. Tomorrow we got Baker Mayfield against Jason, what's the dude's name? The draft pick from the Buffalo Bills, whose name is immediately escaping me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Josh Allen. We got Josh Allen going up against Baker Mayfield tomorrow. It's going to be fun. I can't wait. Show will be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. If you're just like, who the world's Clay Travis? Why do I think this guy's such a genius? Well, it's because I am. If you hate me, make sure you share this with as many of your friends as you can, because there's a good chance some of them will like me. And if they hate me, they'll share it with other people, and eventually my audience will continue to get bigger and bigger. Show's up next month. Books out next month. Can't wait. Republicans buy sneakers too. Go to Sportsbook Review right now, sportsbookreview.com, and you'll get hooked up. My name is Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. Thank you for spending your Thursday afternoon with me. Be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern with Fox Sports Radio. And we're going to be enjoying NFL preseason week 2. Can't wait to see what's going to happen. DBAP, boys and girls, read about World War II. Spend more time learning about history, less time reading about pussies today, and more time reading about badasses with big helicopter dicks from years past. Guys who got into planes, jumped out before they'd even been in a plane before. They folded up their own parachute and jumped out. I am Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. DBAP, boys and girls. Also, SBAP. This has been Outkick the Show.